Children. Well, guess what? We have children, and Joey's going to talk about that. Thank you. When I was a little girl, I used to dream about growing up and having a family of my own. I wasn't certain of all the details at the time, but I knew I wanted kids. When I discovered as a teenager that I was gay, I thought all my dreams were over, because I had been taught by society that gay people can't have kids. I spent a long time hating myself and praying that it would somehow all go away. I even nearly married a man who asked me to, even though I felt nothing but friendship for him, and I would have made his life just as miserable as mine, which is hardly a right thing to do to a friend. I didn't want to live in a world where I was wrong and bad and not as good as my heterosexual friends. I wanted to be normal. As a Christian, I thought I only had two options: be single my whole life or give up my faith. And I couldn't do either of those things, any more than I could change the colour of my eyes. Eventually, as I learned more about the world, I realised that I wasn't so different to everyone else. I wasn't bad or evil or not as good as others. I was just me, just honestly exactly who I am. When I met my partner nearly 7 years ago, I told her on the first date that I was going to have a family. Luckily for me, she didn't run screaming to the hills, and here we are today with 2 daughters. Some people have asked me, why do we need to be married? Kids are more binding than any certificate, right? Sure. But legally there are protections and benefits that our family doesn't get, because someone else, someone not living our life, not knowing what hurdles we face, has decided we're not entitled to because one of us is not a man. I hold 3 nationalities, and when it comes to marriage equality, it's a bit like having a personality disorder. As a British citizen, I can legally be married and have children with my partner in England. If we wanted to, we could go to the British consulate here in Perth and get married. But what's the point? As soon as we step out the door, it's like it never happened. Our marriage is something that ceases to exist a few footsteps away from a place where it's solid and lasting. I am also a Swiss citizen, and both of our children are registered Swiss citizens as well. But under Swiss law, I am only recognised as a single mother. In Switzerland, you can have a civil partnership, but not legally have children. The Swiss consulate said, though, that if my partner and I were married, then there would have been a possibility that we would have been the first legally registered same-sex parents. But alas, this is not the case. Even though we have been married and engaged for almost 3 years, we're still not married. So when we visit my family in Switzerland, one of our girls' mothers ceases to legally exist. She has no rights whatsoever over them while we're on Swiss soil. Lastly, I am an Australian citizen. Here I can legally have children with my partner, but I can't marry her. Can you see the irony? Australia is my homeland of choice, and I want to marry her here. Not in Britain, not in Switzerland, right here in this place that I call home. Yeah! So why do I want to marry her here? Because we are not wrong or bad or not as good. We are a family. We are human beings. No one else should decide that we, in our one shot at this life, don't deserve love or marriage or a family, especially our supposedly non-secular government. What is there to fear in equality? Nothing. We don't want to take away anyone else's rights, only to participate in the same rights as our straight brothers and sisters. As Penny Wong said, the sun will rise, heterosexual marriages won't crumble, and 3-year-olds will still want more ice cream than is good for them. The Corey Bernardis of this world need to stop huffing and puffing the same old rhetoric about marriage being between a man and a woman. They need to stop using the Bible to justify their fears and hatred. As a gay Christian, I find this offensive. Anyone that preaches hate in any form is not a Christian in my eyes. Jesus had one commandment for us to follow, and it's pretty simple. Love your neighbour. When he said that, what he was saying was gay, straight, black, white, brown, yellow, green, queer, trans, rich, poor, left, right, somewhere in between. Old, young, middle-aged, Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, even those bloody Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses who come knocking on our doors, love them all. Be kind, show love, have compassion, demonstrate peace, mercy and understanding. This is real Christianity, not intolerance, hate and misguided fear, not death threats or rights withheld, not ignorance or belittling. Corey and Bernardi and Tony Abbott, if this is what you think God wants, you're doing it all wrong. I don't want to wait until 2019 for marriage equality to be debated in federal parliament. I want marriage equality by the end of this year. If Abbott has a single thread of common decency in him, he will allow there to be a cross-party free vote. Because if he truly believes that he speaks for the people, then he should put his money where his mouth is and let the people speak.
Thank you, Joey. I think it's worth me introducing myself. I'm going to be co-chairing with Farron today. My name is Sam Cavallaro and I'm convener for Equal Love WA. How's everyone going today? Yeah. All pumped? Alright, great to hear it. Now, our next speaker that we're going to have up is Jane McFadden. Jane is a local trans rights activist, so please make her welcome as she comes to the stage.
Hi, it's good to see everyone here today, and I'd like to acknowledge our traditional owners of the land before I start. I've got a few words to talk about marriage equality, and I use the words marriage equality, not same-sex marriage, because as a trans person, same-sex marriage does not apply to every person that's trans. Same-sex marriage implies two men or two women. And some trans people, for various reasons, cannot get the legal gender recognition. Also, same-sex marriage as a term excludes intersex people and people who at birth are designated as being gender not specified. So we need to make sure that we always use the term marriage equality. Now, being a trans person is about your and my sense of identity. It's not about what's between your legs or who you sleep with, but it's about who you are as a person. So for some trans people, they don't fit on the gender binary of male, they don't fit on the gender binary of female, they fit somewhere in the middle. They don't or can't declare themselves as one particular gender in the case of getting married, which is the current requirement. That you need to be able to show proof that you're male and you can marry a female. Show proof that you're female, you can marry a male. There are a lot of people who don't fit into that binary in order to get married at the moment. And also, in order to get recognised, existing marriages must be dissolved. So for me to get my legal recognition, I was required to divorce from my partner. That is something which the government says, no, we don't want people divorcing unless you're trans, and then you have to divorce before we'll recognise you. That's the situation that's got to change. I would love to be able to remarry my partner. I've been together with my partner for over 30 years, and yet our government required that I got divorced for my recognition. And then I've often heard the argument that, well, there's not much difference between de facto and legal. You're recognised, so between marriage, you're recognised. What's the problem? Well, I can tell you from experience, a friend of mine is currently going through the immigration process for their partner. If they were married, they could produce a bit of paper and they would have a spousal visa with no questions asked. Because they're not able to marry, they then have to prove that they're in a de facto relationship. That involves a lot of paperwork. That involves, and the department at the end of it is able to turn around and say, no, we don't believe you, which is what's happened in my friend's case. If they had the choice to be married they could simplify, hand over the one piece of paper and be treated the same as a married couple. But that option is currently denied to them. This has to change. And it's not just in the area of immigration where this is the case. I know someone currently has just enrolled for military service. Because they're not married, once again they have to prove that they are a de facto couple, as opposed to being able to produce a piece of paper saying we're married, and on production of that paper immediately it's accepted. And then I hear the religious argument that, well, marriage is an institution by God. Actually, in Australia, marriage is a civil institution. The government's ability to define and legislate for marriage is actually covered by Section 51 of the Constitution. So that argument in Australia does not hold weight. Another argument I've heard from religious people and from churches is that, well, if this marriage equality is granted, we will have to perform marriages against our views and our beliefs. I can tell you that is not correct. If any person can go to a church and ask for to be married in that church or married by the priest or pastor, the church currently has the right to perform that marriage. That's not going to change under marriage equality. They can still choose whether a marriage is allowed to be performed in their church or not. We're not asking for that to be changed. And personally, someone who doesn't want to perform a ceremony is not someone I want at my marriage anyway. And of course, another thing we often hear against marriage equality is the so-called slippery slope argument. We just have to look at Senator Corey Bernardi and some of the things he's come out with. Marriage equality is about two consenting adults. This argument that people will want to marry their pet dogs, I'm sorry, but whenever will a dog be a consenting adult?
Exactly.
People talk about, well, it'll allow pedophilia through marriage of child brides. I'm sorry, but that doesn't not involve two consenting adults. Marriage equality is about consenting adults being able to marry regardless of their gender. And then we hear lots of arguments about the economics and we need to do more studies. Well, as far as the economics of marriage equality goes, that's a positive to our economy. All these extra marriages occurring. If I had a business that's in the wedding industry, I'd be happy to have marriage equality. I can sell more cakes. That's more income for me. I can book my function centre out more often. That's more income for me. By having more marriages occur, that's more jobs for kitchen staff, for bar staff, for cleaning staff. So this economic argument does not hold water. So I'd like to conclude now that marriage equality does have an immediately benefit for me because I'm able to remarry my partner. All it does is takes out the definition of a man and a woman and puts it purely in the category of two consenting adults. And that's all that marriage equality should be for.